Super. Well, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. I'm Harry, one of the senior account executives here at Hivebrite, joined by.
Erin, hi, I'm Erin. I'm a senior customer success manager here at Hivebrite also.
So today we'll be diving into Hivebrite's group feature and how a strategic approach to groups can transform your community. So we'll start with a big picture look at groups and why they matter and walk you through how they work on the platform and offer best practice to maximize the success. And Erin will ultimately lead that guidance. And then we'll show you groups in action. So a live demo. We've reserved 10 minutes at the end there for Q&A. So please, by all means, feel free to share your questions in the Q&A box. And we'll be sure to address those as we go. But I will hand right over to you, Erin.
Thanks, Harry. Cool. So with the housekeeping out of the way, let's dive in. So the question on everyone's lips, what are groups? So Hivebrite's overall mission is to power communities, help them thrive and maximize their input. And groups, micro communities, sub communities, however you want to call them, are one of the most powerful ways that can help you do that. So essentially what they are dedicated spaces within the wider community, which allow you as community leaders to manage content, the communication and member engagement based on things like special interests, location, profession, that sort of thing. So yeah, think of them as a community within a community. And a good thing about groups as well is that they can be public, depending on your need. They can be private or even invisible as well. They can be uniquely branded with different colors, that sort of thing. And you can even manage membership. So if you're thinking of monetizing your group structure, that's something you can do as well. And best of all, you don't have to do this all yourself. You can have group level admins who will be able to help you run things smoothly behind the scenes. So groups are really powerful, but with great power comes great responsibility and ultimately the need for a strong strategy. So like Harry said, if you have any questions about some of the things I'll be talking about, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we'll be able to get those answered for you at the end. So um, any of you who have worked with me before know I love a meme. So I'm going to start with this one, and maybe this will hit home to some of you. You've got the community manager over in the corner, then you've got the global live feed where people are chatting, people are asking questions about all sorts, same within the forum. But you've just spent 12 hours setting up dozens and dozens and dozens of different specific topic groups. So what we call this is silos. And I like to use an analogy. I love analogies in general, but I really love this one because I think it does hit home, which is a house party analogy. So when you're setting up your groups, it's really easy to get carried away and create groups for every single possible subject your members could possibly start discussing. But it's really important not to create silos for the sake of it, because otherwise you're going to end up with some really empty spaces. So when I say house party analogy, what I mean is think about going to an amazing New Year's party in a really small apartment. It's going to be buzzing, it's going to be thriving. You can see where the drinks are being poured, you can see where you need to throw your coat. You can quite easily go up to someone and start having a conversation with them because there's not all that empty space. You know who's there, you know who you can talk to. And then on the flip side of that, imagine you're going to a New Year's party at a gigantic mansion with dozens and dozens of different rooms. You're going to be overwhelmed, especially if you don't know anyone else at that party. It's going to be difficult for you to decide who to go up and speak to. You're not sure what room to find a drink in, and you might go into a room where two people are having a conversation, but other than that, it's a little bit dead. And what are you going to do? You're going to probably turn around and leave. So that is my analogy for groups. I think it definitely resonates, and I'm hoping that some of these tips that we'll have for you will help you kind of avoid that. So, how do my groups fit into my overall community strategy? So, I like to think of them as scaffolding. They can support your wider community without the kind of tone of your wider community getting kind of going off on a tangent, if you see what I mean. So in terms of what people use groups for within Hivebrite, what we see from some of our customers, people use them in countless ways. I tried to drill it down to 6 kind of key use cases, but people get really creative with it, which I love to see. So yeah, some of the most common ones would be like alumni year groups. So you could do like graduates of 2010, graduates of 2015, or break out into like sororities, that sort of thing. Hobbies and interest groups. Anyone who knows me, I love a book club personally. That can always be fun in a community. Um, Specific groups of mentoring and professional development, really honing in on a certain skill. Advocacy, inclusion, volunteer groups, places where you really want to rally people around a specific cause and get into the weeds of that cause. Hopefully in a safe space too, where people can, feel that they can be themselves and offer up great insights. And then probably one of the most popular ones is local or regional groups. So these could be for like cities, chapters, they could even be for like whole countries where people can organise in-person meetups, that sort of thing that might not belong in the wider international community. So very flexible, there's a lot you can do, and I think that's what makes things so impactful. So to make them thrive, I like to think of them as micro communities with a life of their own. I like to think of them as a garden. I love plants, I love gardening, and I think with a garden, it's really important to firstly water your plants or they're going to die, but secondly make sure that they're put in the right environment at the beginning. And there's no harm if you haven't. There's no harm if you haven't set things up right in the beginning, because the beauty of communities is that they're ever changing, ever growing, and that innovating and evaluating their purpose is a completely natural part of a community life cycle. So in terms of the 5 pillars for success that I recommend, first of all is tailoring. So making sure that there is a specific need for this group. If no one is talking about submarines in your vehicle community, maybe don't create a group about submarines, because it's just going to be a waste of space and create clutter. So make sure that there's a real specific purpose, ideally that someone has asked for this space in the first place, and that whatever conversations and kind of events and things are happening within this group are specific. The next thing is attract. So making a gorgeous homepage that really showcases the value of that group. If you have specific kind of guidelines or code of conduct for that group, make sure that that's illustrated there. And then also making it easy for people to connect. So you can DM people within a group, which is really nice. You can have your separate member map, so you can go through and see exactly who's in that group, which Harry will show you later. And then, you know what, if something's not working, that's okay. Evaluate it, get feedback from the members, tweak it. Think of it like, you know what, I've started growing a herb garden outside, but I live in England and it's cold probably 350 days of the year. Basil doesn't like the cold. I should move that to a different spot. There's no harm in doing that at all. It's, like pruning, it's fine. That's where innovation comes in. So feel free to change things, feel free to switch things up, test new ideas and formats. You can even create like an invisible testing group to do that, should you want to. So yeah, I think with these 5 kind of pillars, when you set out to create those groups, can really help you set things up for success and kind of help create a little engine within your community. So moving on from that, it takes a village. It does take a village. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's really good to rally the troops and make sure that you have help. So I mentioned earlier, you can have your own group admins. These will have separate permissions to the kind of global admin within the community, but it's really important to empower them. And I say this because from some of the communities that I've worked with, a lot of the time group admins are doing things voluntarily. They're taking time out of their day. They might have another day job, they might have other, responsibilities in life. So it's really important that you set them up for success so that they don't then suddenly have this garden to look after and they're like, oh, I don't know where the shovel is. So tactic number one is set clear expectations. What's the overall goal of the group? What is their role within the group? Are they more of a moderator? Are they more of a greeter? Should they be handling kind of difficult discussions, that sort of thing? How often should they post? What kind of things should they post? That sort of thing. Communicate the value. Make sure that there's something in it for them, whether that's professional development, whether it's a reward and recognition. People are coming on board to your community and having more responsibilities because they care. So it's really important to recognize those efforts and inspire them to continue. And then finally, my third tactic would be provide ongoing support. So this doesn't stop once you've onboarded them and shown them how the back office works and what to post. It might take a minute for them to find their footing, but things like templates, FAQs, quick start guides can help them. And then I think moving forward, creating a group admin specific group, sorry, it's a bit meta there, but a group admin specific group where they can kind of communicate any hiccups or any confusion they might have, if they're dealing with a difficult member or something that hasn't gone to plan, they can reach out to their peers and ask for best practice and ultimately feel part of their own mini community in a way. So yeah, strong admin support leads to stronger group performance, and it's really important to inspire and empower those people who are managing your groups. So just a couple of other things before we go over onto the demo. Now that you've set up your group, you've got your group admins, you've got your team together, your A team. How are you going to keep folks engaged? You've created a gorgeous space, you've added in loads of content. How are you going to keep the momentum going? So we like to call this the engagement flywheel. And within the flywheel, you need to fuel it by taking certain actions. So these are the tactics that we know work with keeping the momentum growing within a group. So the first one is my favorite. I probably should have put my favorite last, but anyway, rituals. I love rituals. Rituals, traditions, however you want to call it, I love them. This can be something like, Motivation Mondays, Throwback Thursdays, especially if you're an alumni. Nostalgia brings people together. Or like a monthly coffee morning where you actually just don't talk about anything to do with the community, you just get to know each other. Those kind of recurring rituals that happen on a certain date that people can have reminders for, you can set up events, that kind of thing, is what really keeps people coming back to the community. And I love seeing all the kind of creative ways people do that. Imperial have Bird on the 3rd, where they post a different bird on the 3rd of the month, and people get really excited about it. Prompted discussions. So sometimes it's hard to get people to start discussions themselves, especially in the beginning. So as an admin, you need to kind of lead by example a bit. So things like responding to a thread with an image that reminds them of something, this or that kind of posts. Strategic DMs, like never underestimate the power of simply saying hi. Those little dopamine hits when someone's message drops into your inbox. Just ask people questions, get to know them on a kind of private level, and then they might open up into the community more. Events, we've already touched on that, but especially for location focused groups, events can be really powerful. And then recognition. So, shouting out people, celebrating their achievements. And then hopefully down the line, people will see your actions, they'll see and feel really safe within the group. And then hopefully they'll be able to start leading by example too. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful. And over to Harry.
Thank you, Erin. That was brilliant, and I think nice to know you're still having house parties. So Erin stopped inviting me a long time ago. I've known Erin for some years, but no, I'm only kidding. But you know what? I think you've really captured there just how kind of powerful groups can be when combined with a strategic approach. So to recap, I want to give a quite high level overview today. We won't go into too much detail around the group functionality, mainly because it's probably one of our broadest features. It's used incredibly widely, and again, this is probably because it's such a dynamic feature. I mean, Erin touched on it there. They can be public, they can be private, they can be secret. So you can really structure a community based on how you want to deliver certain experiences to certain members. I would say actually I see more variation in the use of groups than perhaps any other Hivebrite feature. Whether that's to offer structure to a larger community, focus on specific topics, local, regional, as Erin said there. I've even seen use cases where people have decided to use a group for a specific event or exhibition and add all of that content, mini sub events, if you will, within that one space. Sponsorship and monetization too. So sometimes I come across use cases where organizations have sponsors and they want to give them a sort of quote unquote sub community within that global environment that can really reflect their own content. Works really, really nicely. But ultimately, what this does is provide a dedicated space for members to really hone in on specific things. So it does it by offering really relevant content. It's a space to build meaningful connections with other members. So you can create an environment that is just dedicated to that specific topic or use case or event or whatever it may be. I often describe them as a kind of natural evolution of your community. So at some point, most communities, regardless of the use case, regardless of the end goal, they will probably face either an overload of topics, an overload of users, and feel a need to add a little bit more structure to that. And that's often where groups come in. Perhaps the best differentiation is to consider how it, or the benefits for the admin and the end user. So for the end user, it's a lot of what Erin's touched on there. It's familiar navigation. So a lot of what I've got at a global level, I've then got at a group level. For instance, I might have forums. So if there are certain topics that users want to cover, they can come in. It can all be categorized based on that specific topic. I can go in, I can contribute to that forum, upvote, downvote those responses based on the kind of quality or the accuracy of them there. It's completely customizable, so not all of these features will resonate with everybody's community, and often we see variation within global communities. So you might have one group that's very event focused, another that's a little bit more focused around forums, news articles, etc. So yeah, completely customizable based on your needs. You've also got the added benefit of being able to build completely customizable pages that would sit within a group. This can create a really immersive experience. So a lot of the time people will have it as like a homepage for that particular group. So going back to the example of sponsorship or partnership, if, for instance, there was a particular organization that wanted to have its own customized homepage that sat within that group, you can really go to town with the design of that. You're not actually restricted to just features or custom pages. You can also pull in other components, different tools through iframes. The subtabs really open up some opportunities there. Similarly, the custom branding. So this can be applied throughout and help you create a really immersive feel for your members, so that they're able to identify with whatever that group is for or addressing. Again, the sponsorship model is very common there. It might even be that this particular group has an awful lot of events, in which case I can go in, I can see all of those events. I would be able to register for those. I can see who's attending. So you've got everything that you've got at a global level recreated at a group level for the user. Although perhaps one of the bits that will resonate more with the audience that we've got today is the admin panel itself. So this is really the juicy bit and where you can kind of get stuck into managing this group. So you can create group admin access. Now, what that essentially means is a global admin has given a certain set of permissions to a group admin to take control of that space. So for example, let's say as a group admin, I was allowed to completely customize the branding of this particular group. I could go in, configure that, change it, make it look and feel however I please. It may be that as a global admin, that's not something that you're happy for me to do, in which case you can kind of restrict that access. Of course, you can also invite members and manage your users from here. So you can bulk upload your users, export your users. You can go into users profiles at quite a granular level. Again, probably more importantly, you can manage who can and can't come into this particular space. Another really interesting feature that tends to come up a lot when I'm talking to prospects that are looking at launching groups is engagement scoring. So even though engagement scoring is actually set at a global level, meaning the scores that are associated with certain actions are set by a global admin, you still have a really clear overview at a group level as to who is your highest contributing member. To kind of bring that to life, if you've got a lot of, or rather, if you're using groups for training modules, for instance, this can be a really powerful thing because you will be able to see who your highest value members are. And actually, Erin gave me quite an interesting example the other day whereby this can be a great metric for who should become the successor of that group. As an admin. So who should actually take over that group when when that group admin has done their piece. Events are very common as well. So you've got all of the functionality that you have at a global level with events. So let's say, for instance, there was I don't know, you shared a resource that's particularly interesting. There's an event around that. It's maybe an exhibition, for example. You can set up this particular event to reflect all of the information that you require. So if there's a certain registration form, it might be ticketed, it might be RSVP. More importantly, you've got a clear overview of all of your participants. You can show those participants that are attending the event. Probably one of the core things that I tend to see when people are looking at the event module is the ability to schedule and run your communication from the back end. So things like a confirmation email, reminder email, so not having to continuously come back into the platform to manage that. Custom tabs as well, if there are certain, another great example from Erin, actually, if there was a dietary requirements and you wanted to share that as part of an event, you could. But the key takeaway here is that you can run all of this at a group level away from the global community if needed. Campaigns as well. So one of the biggest challenges that I tend to discuss with prospective customers is, okay, well, how do we make sure the content that we're pushing to users is relevant to them? A lot of the time people might have an existing newsletter. They get some interaction with it, but maybe not a huge amount. The campaign tool will allow you to create, customize, and send out really targeted campaigns. So let's say, sticking with the resource example, let's say that you've uploaded some documentation and you want to share that with a certain set of users. You can design a really nice looking email campaign. Here's a button to access that resource, for instance. The nice thing about Hivebrite is so much of your data is in one place. You can then do a really targeted campaign. So we can say, okay, I just want this particular email to go to users within this group that have expressed an interest in a particular topic, or that we know this content would resonate with them, and just target them. In a similar fashion, actually, from the user's point of view, they do have the ability to customize their own notification settings to a particular group to make sure that they're only receiving the content that's relevant to them. But in general, all of the components that we're looking at here are completely customizable and manageable for that group admin. So you can really create this immersive experience for your members. I'm somewhat conscious of time, Erin, and I can tell you're looking at the clock there. So should I hand back to you at that point?
I'm on mute. I'm always on mute. Cool. So thank you. We've got a couple of questions, which is awesome. So the first one I will take is from Estefani. So how many members minimum do you think you need to start a group to be successful? It's a really good question, and it ultimately depends on the group. So if I think about our internal book club, there's only 8 of us. 6 of us are super active. It's a tiny group, but it serves its purpose. So for instance, if you had a group for let's say like the exec team on your company, for example, that's fine. Like, that's a small group. You can definitely thrive. You're not going to have crazy engagement, but it's a space that serves a purpose, ultimately. With bigger groups, like let's say you've got a class of 2015 alumni group, for instance, then yeah, kind of critical mass does come into play. You might not want to create a group for every single year. Maybe you could do it by half decade or decade, that sort of thing. Because depending on how long the alumni program's been running, you're then gonna have silos of lots of different years. So what I'd recommend in that case is, rather than kind of starting with a number, is starting with a kind of idea of how you want it to run. Is it the kind of group where people are just going to check in quarterly to see what events are going on? If that case, crack on. If it's a group that you're going to be measuring engagement for on like a daily or weekly basis, then yeah, maybe think about how many people are in the group. But when it comes to community, you've also got to remember that there's what we call a engagement pyramid, and with a lot of communities, the top small percent of people are going to be really active contributors, the people who are going to be creating posts, welcoming people, that kind of thing. The main bulk are going to be we don't like to call them lurkers, we like to call them learners, and not the main bulk necessarily, but there'll be people who come in and they're more focused on consuming content. Yes, they'll RSVP to an event, but they might not create one. They might not ask a question, but they're going to read what everyone else is answering. They'll really love the media center. They'll love the resources you put out, but they might not interact at that level. So I think rather than focusing on how many people are in the group, think about what's the intention of the group. What do you as an organization or as a community manager want this group to achieve? And then think about how many people you'd need to kind of make that happen, if that makes sense.
To kind of add to that as well, Erin, I think one of the things that I've seen done really nicely recently is actually put out a poll, a survey, gauge from your members whether or not that is a necessary thing to roll out. And ultimately, I fully support what Erin says there. I don't want to say that number of users is a vanity metric by any means, but the value is so much more important than the number of users. I've seen plenty of communities with lots of members and some with very small numbers, but actually the engagement can be quite similar if there's the value behind the nature of the group.
100%. And it's not always the people who are the loudest that are the only people getting value. You can, I'm part of loads of Reddit communities and I never post, but I get so much value out of it, and I'm definitely a dedicated member. I'm always going back. So yeah, you can definitely do that. So anonymous attendee, hello anonymous attendee, is that your real name? Has asked, do all members have access to the member directory, or can that be shared with executive team only? So that can be fully restricted, and that's a global feature, and with that it's tied to user roles. So you as an admin, like a global admin, not group admin here, can create different user roles with different permissions. So if you only want people with one role, in this case the executive team, to be able to see the member directory, then yeah, that's something you can do. You can absolutely restrict that, and you can also restrict who's shown in it via user roles as well. So I hope that answers your question. Lauren has asked, in terms of engagement scoring, is the criteria for the score something you can customize? Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's another global admin kind of setting that you can adjust. But for instance, if you wanted to weight more score to creating a post or writing a comment than just liking something that's quite passive, then yeah, you can do that. You can choose what weighting you want to give each kind of interaction. And I think it's something that we're going to be building out as well. So I hope that helps. Anonymous attendee, what are the best practices of moderating many groups? I think moderation should start at the door. Not like at the door because it's online, there's not a physical door, but I really do think that setting the tone for the community and your code of conduct and what you expect of members should be not hidden away in the privacy policy or the terms of service. Like, no one really reads those. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but really. Not many people do. I think you need to have it quite obvious. I think having it on the main menu, ideally on the landing page that members get to as soon as they join your community, so that they can read through and see like, yes, okay, I understand what is expected of me, and if I don't follow the rules, then okay, moderation is going to happen. We also have a journeys feature that can be really great for onboarding members, because you can have like code of conduct, meet the team, what do I do next, in like really simple steps. You can set it up so that's the first thing a new member lands on when they join the community, and you can also see who has completed it. So if you do get a repeat offender, you can refer them back to the code of conduct and you can actually see if they've read it. So I think for me that's really helpful. But yeah, at the same time, like, not really, you don't want to police people too much, because ultimately a community should be a safe space where people can say that what they want to say. But depending on the focus of the community, yeah, you need to kind of keep people in check if necessary. So I think DMs are helpful for that too. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and maybe we should do a separate webinar on moderation. But yeah, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I think as well, not to give too much away, but there's some exciting stuff around moderation in the
Yeah.
roadmap. So an awful lot coming there.
Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, we have quite a few. For group admins, one of the challenges we have currently is there's no way to create a default group admin type role that has all the desired privileges identified. We've been able to duplicate admins as a workaround. Are there any plans to improve the scalability of the admin role management to allow or pre-design roles and privileges to be assigned to admins? Not at the moment, and I think the reason is that admins tend to come in all shapes and sizes, and for some groups they'll have multiple different admins. So one will be in charge of content, one will be more like the kind of back office operational side of things. So generally I don't think group admins have the same kind of roles and rights. But if that's something that will be helpful, we can always raise that with our product team as an insight. Like, feedback's ultimately really important to us. So that's a really good one. And yeah, we can take that one away.
How do I prevent overlap or confusion between groups? I think is a really nice one there. Sorry, Erin, I thought I was about to cut you up there. Super categories.
Yeah, super categories. Categorize them. 100%. Sorry, that was a really short answer. For those of you who don't know what super categories are, you could have a section within like the groups page where you'll have like groups by location, or groups by interest, or groups by, help me,
Yeah,
copy, whatever. So then people can kind of go through and they know what they're looking for, and yeah, you can prevent overlap there, because yeah.
Yeah, another live example that I've seen recently is a community that's using groups specifically for training. So they will have a cohort of users going through, individual training modules set as groups, but actually also the groups functionality is serving a very different purpose in that they have regional groups as well. Super categories just help sort of differentiate the feature itself in terms of, okay, this is a slightly more social space, and this is your training material, and the user journey is quite different, but actually the feature is very similar. So in summary, yeah, you can do an awful lot with that through categorizing and branding.
Ooh, anonymous attendee, on moderation, are group admins able to moderate the forum and live feeds themselves? Yes. Yes, they can. So they can, using the back office, remove posts. They can remove forum posts. Members as well within the group, they can flag posts if it's something that they might not be happy seeing. What's kind of offensive for one community might not be for another. Like, for instance, if someone's talking about like blood, it's like, oh, but then if it's a medical community, it's less and it's more just, part of the job. So yes, people can indeed moderate the forums and live feeds themselves. That's definitely a big role of a group admin.
Think we have time for one or two more, Erin. So what I can see here, can you run events across multiple groups at once? Yes, absolutely. as well as at a global level. So if there are events that are relevant to everybody, of course, if it's only relevant to 2 out of your 6 groups, then yes, you can do that as well.
The one thing I would say is with that, the best thing would be to create the group at a global level, rather than event level, because rather than at group level, because at global level you can create the event and you can add related groups to it, and that would work better. Okay. Do you recommend member-led events? Any favorites you've seen? Oh yeah, 100%. Definitely. I think that goes also back to setting expectations of what, firstly, like, do you expect the group admin to create loads of events, or do you expect them to empower members to? I think it's a really great thing, actually, to empower members to create their own events. I think it can give them a real sense of building the community, and I think ultimately we should all be building with people rather than for them, because if you're building for people, you're just kind of making assumptions. And sometimes you see people who might create a load of events and actually they don't really resonate with members. It's not what members want. Members might want something more casual, they might want something more specific. So yeah, I think actually handing the torch over and letting members create their own events within a specific, like, you know, wireframe maybe, is a really good thing to do. One thing I like, I have a community which is for women's development across the world. They don't have chapter leaders as such, but within their groups they give them free rein to create like kind of talking events, just round tables around specific topics, and they've all created their all kind of like different graphics for those covers. I really like it. I think that's important. And, you know, if someone has something to say and they feel brave enough to lead an event within that community, that's a good member to have. That's a really, really strong sign of a strong community. Within a group, can group members see all public users? Currently, I can only see the group members. So I'm not sure if I understand this right, but I'm hoping I am, Charles. Within the group, yeah, you can only see within the group. If you then go to the global level, you'll have like the global member directory, and depending on the settings you've set up for those members, they'll then be able to see all the other users within that community.
Erin, I've just had a warning saying we're out of time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I love a chat. I could go on all day. Okay, I think there's some other questions which look really good. So hopefully maybe Ellie, we can follow up with them. But this has been really, really fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some really great tips on groups within the communities, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see you on another webinar very soon. So yeah, thank you for spending your morning, afternoon, evening with us, depending on where you are in the world, and Ali will send out a recording after the call, some point this week. All right.
Thank you all.
Ciao, everyone. Thank you.